wanted to make sure that you understand that David is pouring water into this glass. There is no vodka or
Are you sure?
I'm sure.
First of all, on behalf of the family and Carol's closest friends, let me extend this very warm thank you to all of you for being here with us today. In preparing this eulogy for Carol, I began, I think quite typically, by putting together some key facts about herself and her life, her birth date, her birthplace, names of brothers, sisters, children, and so on. I thought that what I could do was to attempt to capture her life story by building something of a biography about Carol, and to revisit some of those moments that, in some form or other, all of us here have the pleasure of having shared with her. But you know, it wasn't long before I realized that what I was attempting to do was not only impossible, but would very sadly miss the mark during this time and opportunity as family and dear friends gather to express just how much we dearly miss Carol. Because the truth is, for all of us here, Carol meant something to each of us. And to each of us, Carol meant something a little different. But surely there must be some commonality, some way to reveal something true about Carol, and at the same time something true about each of us as well. For some of us, Carol will always be remembered as a pillar of strength, the one person that invariably another could always turn to for guidance, support, love, and trust. For some of us, Carol will always be remembered as driven, the one person who could get things done, from the smallest detail concerning the amount of yarn that their group could look forward to the following month, to holding true to the larger vision that many helping hands could always change a young person's life, if even in a small way. To borrow a phrase, many a splendid thing are achieved by those whose inner convictions tell them that something inside them is far greater than circumstance. For some of us, Aunt Carol was auntie, but somehow, when you pair the word aunt with the name Carol, it was oddly stronger, more permanent. No matter how the world would turn, Auntie Carol would be at the center of it. You could count on it. Carol was also grandma to others, and yet so much more than merely a grandmother, but a confidant, a counselor, a very watchful eye, a caring heart, and a best friend. For some of us, Carol was mom. Moms give life. Still waters run deep indeed. Beyond the imperfections of human relations and the nuances and troublesome details of daily existence, a mother's love runs unfathomably deep. I'd like to ask each and every one of you to just take a moment and ask yourselves why it is that we're even here. Undoubtedly, there's tremendous sadness. Carol's been described as being the matriarch of this family, and if there's any truth to that at all, then an integral and core part of this family has been taken away from us. We miss Carol in ways that are profoundly personal and defy simple definitions. But we're also here to celebrate Carol's life. And in this term, celebration, herein lies the pivotal point that I believe transforms an experience of loss and sadness to possibility, hope, legacy, and the one thing that just might prove to be the one commonality that best describes Carol, no matter whose life she touched. It's often far too easy to say the words that someone was loving. These are words that can be said without a great deal of thought or reflection. The proof of it lies deeper than the words themselves. It comes from how a person chose to live one's life, and in the choices that one makes in the course of navigating through life's occasional storms. I've only known Carol for 10 years or so, and I also have some incredibly fond memories during the time that I was lucky enough to know her. But in those 10 years, I've witnessed uncountably many instances when Carol placed others before herself. It is not the contents of one's life experiences that transforms sadness to hope, but the way in which she lived her life, by caring without asking for reward, by loving without need for recognition, and by giving without demand for return. This celebration of Carol's life, for me, will always be a reminder that Carol's legacy is, in fact, an invitation to pick up her torch and to carry it no matter what life brings. Her very essence was her openness to sharing whatever she had with anyone less fortunate than herself. And time again, she would do this without reservation or regret. Now this, if anything, is what I believe to be the source of that transformation. Her life's invitation to all who knew her to move gently beyond the grief of our own loss and to discover in very real terms how she is still with each of us every day from this day forward when we carry her torch of love and kindness with others in our own lives. Carol Ann Mckenzie, we miss you beyond words. There will certainly be days ahead when our sense of loss overcomes all else. But we also know that there will be days when we can see a little more clearly, and in those moments of choice, please watch over us. Remind us that of hope and faith and love, but love is yet and always will be the greatest. Our celebration of your life, Carol, begins today, but it doesn't end today, because it continues every day when we remember what you stood for. We will find comfort there when we recognize those times that you truly are still with us. But Carol, even so, we will never stop missing you. Many a splendid thing are achieved by those whose inner convictions tell them that something inside them is far greater than circumstance. Ainsley has sent some words as well from Nepal. Ainsley is Carol's granddaughter, and we're fortunate enough to have one of Ainsley's best friends, Melissa, to share some of those words. After which point, I'd like to open up the podium to anyone at all here who might have some words and thoughts to share with us. Thanks, Melissa.
So I'm just going to read this as Ainsley sent it to me. When I think upon my grandmother and the life she lived, three things in particular come to mind. She had truly a servant heart. She had one of the most bold and assertive spirits that I had ever come across, and she loved and valued our family so much. She taught me what it meant to have a servant heart. The way she poured herself out for others, she was truly inspirational. She was bold in her love and constantly putting others before herself. The way she gave herself affected many people and offered to step up for those who were vulnerable and need. My grandmother was not one to keep her feelings to herself, and I really admired her assertive spirit that she possessed. She would always speak up for what she believed in. She was not one to sit back and just watch. She would speak up and then follow through with her actions. She loved our family very much, and I really appreciated the way she worked to keep the family unified. You always knew that there would be a family dinner at Grandma's, no matter what the holiday was. Her life affected so many lives along the way. So many people were given a sense of identity and belonging because of her. My team and I are praying for her in Nepal and those affected by her loss. The day she passed here in Nepal, there were so many Bible verses and pictures that were received and that have really encouraged me. Just the one that stood out most, Ainsley, was Isaiah 61:3. To comfort all who mourn and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. They asked to be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord, for the display of his splendor. I have been reading this verse multiple times over the past week. I am sad she is gone. She lived a beautiful life, definitely a life lived for others. I looked at who she was, and I want to honor her view the way I live. My prayer is that all of us will do the same. I want to see her beauty instead of ashes, find joy instead of the mourning. I like to have a grateful spirit instead of despair, and for each of us to be called oaths of righteousness, living lives where we can see the difference her life made in ours. I wish I could have been at the service. Our team has definitely been praying constantly